Huameng YS3M. It's fast, stable, a bit tight, and completely unlooped, which kind of give a sandy feel. But I really appreciate the fact that it's unlooped because I intend to put in my own loop anyway, and I don't want to clean out factory loop. I do think this can be done a little bit more with pro level cubes, where the most likely target audience are people who know how to loop their own cubes anyway. Whereas something more beginner targeted could do better with some factory loop. Another thing is, some people have said that this cube is too tight out of the box and needed to be loosened, but I just set it up tighter than the stock tension anyway, and I looped it with Dignitas, Weight Free and Speedy, which is pretty much my standard combo for any cube I intend to use in my lineup of mains. And like with this cube, I was actually going for the feel of the original Valk 3, except being much smoother and much more polished, and I think the YS3M really delivered in that regard, and the result is one of the best, if not the best cube I have ever felt. It's just super smooth, the speed is really decent, it's fast enough to actually be enjoyable, but at the same time it's not overshooting or uncontrollable, and the corner cutting is pretty much as expected. So going into the features, I'm just going to start with the more boring features first and save the coolest features for the last. So first, the dragon scale anti-stick design. I think it's quite general consensus by now that having both a mix of like vertical and horizontal anti-stick design is more optimal for spreading loop around and retaining loop inside the cube as compared to just a bunch of like horizontal lines that run parallel to the direction of the cube's rotation. Next, I'm going to mention the actual mechanism of the cube. Some people have said that the YS3 is similar to the RS3, but I'm going to say upfront it's a different design altogether. I'll go as far as to say that the YS3 is more similar to the Valk 3, Guoguan Yexiao, and most gun 3x3s than it is to the RS3. So the YS3 itself just mainly features a very blocky design that is more similar to all the 3x3s that I mentioned earlier, but the RS3 on the other hand features one extra unique feature where the centerpiece is squared off at the bottom and is rounded everywhere else on top, and the corners feature some hollow space. So this hollow space is actually located at the same height as the squared off tip of the centerpiece. So this means that when you reverse corner cut, the square tip actually isn't catching on anything. So I do think the RS3 mechanism is actually a very clever way to avoid the stability issues that may arise if you round your cube off too much, yet at the same time it still managed to preserve how much the cube is capable of reverse corner cutting. However, as you have seen earlier, empty space is pretty much a must-have in order for the RS3 mechanism to work. The YS3M on the other hand does away with the empty space, which means that it has to get rid of basically what makes the RS3 unique in the first place. And even though I don't think this always makes the cube more stable, but in the case of the YS3M it definitely does. I do think the spring choices and like, okay, this one is maglev, but like the choices of how strong you want the tensions to be, as well as like just the overall like how much you even round them, I definitely think this is not overly rounded to the point where it becomes unstable. And also it has quite a bunch of different magnet tech that I'll talk more later, but its stability is definitely an upgrade over the YS3, and it feels much more like intact and less empty on the inside. Another major change between the YS3 and the RS3 is just the torpedo structure, with the RS3 using a split double torpedo and the YS3 using a combined one, like where the second torpedo is just now stuck to the first one and it's physically wider. However, this change has already occurred going from the Weilong GTS3 to the GTS4. So I've watched and heard about some complaints about Moyi using the same dual adjustment system since the Weilong GTS3 from 2018, but in all honesty I feel like you shouldn't even bother to fix something that isn't even broken, and I still think this is the best dual adjustment system ever created. As far as compressing the spring from the top goes, I very much prefer to have infinity possible settings that a regular spring and screw has to offer, as opposed to having a limited number of set tensions with a different system that isn't a spring and a screw. And yes, it's true that I can't make all 6 sides perfectly equal, but my counter argument to that is just, if I can make them similar enough not to notice the difference, there's no point in making them perfectly equal, and it's not a difficult thing to do. You can just test and pull them on 2 sides and turn the cube left and right, so on. As far as compressing the spring from the bottom goes, this is basically a way to increase the spring strength without affecting how much you can stretch the puzzle, and I think the system that we have is still the best one. I do have thoughts of like trying to design a new version of this cup where the cup and the centerpiece around it fit together like a water bottle cap, so that you can screw it in and out and you have infinity possible settings, but then it's really tricky to anchor it in a way that doesn't slide. Because bear in mind, this cup is constantly getting pushed down by a pair of repelling magnets. So I think the 9 possible settings of the GTS3 are still the best we can do for now. And just a confession, for both my RS3 and YS3, I actually use setting 0. I think the only cube that I really use something else other than setting 0 is the GTS3. That one I went for setting 4 back in the time when I was borrowing one. Another thing with this cube is that the magnet strengths are not adjustable. So this might be a complaint for some people, but for me this is not really a big issue. I think firstly, I think one counter argument towards having non-adjustable magnet strength is like just have a good strength right from the start, and I think this cube already does that job pretty well. But I've actually have another counter argument towards adjustable magnets, and this is something I've heard from 2 cube designers. If they had to give up a cube design feature, magnet adjustability would probably be one of the first few to get given up. And these 2 designers that I heard of are actually 2 Yusheng, who needs no further introduction, and Xu Miantao, who is actually credited as the designer of the original version of the Aochuang, but now he's currently the Moretry CEO. So I think one point that I really got from Xu Miantao's video was that, like, if you have many factors inside the cube already, especially all the repulsion tech, a lot of them require like really perfectly planned magnet strength. So if you have a variety of magnet strength, it's much harder to design your cube, and very easy to accidentally click it to a stronger strength that affects the optimal performance. And the cube works best with relatively little range of magnet strength, and it might be just some designers' preference to not make the cube adjustable. The YS3M also has very close distance core corner magnets. Like, its internal ball core is much bigger than past models. Okay, I know this one is something that I 3D printed on my own, but the Super RS3 definitely has a smaller ball core than the YS3M. Yeah, I'm just going to pull up my Aochuang WRM for an example. And like at longer distances, which this cube is one of the earlier ones that I've core corner magnetized, and the distance between the corner and the core magnets are a bit bigger. And the most I can get out of this is higher stability and I think a more consistent feel, because what happens is the corners are being attracted to a position that's defined relative to the core, not relative to a neighboring piece. So this helps to add a slight boost to the stability because it's a pullback to cube shape. But with a closer distance one, which now I'm going to refer to my Meilong 4, this one, okay, I'm not going to disassemble it, but anyway, the corner and the core magnets are actually physically much closer together, and you can feel the attraction a bit more. And this leads to a slight change in how the cube feels, because no longer are you just feeling the one single snap of a piece magnet, but because the core corner magnets are located much closer to the core, you can actually feel the attraction over a much wider angle. So, okay, in the case of the YS3M, I think you can feel it from like almost as far as here. The Huameng YS3M is also able to realign itself from quite an impressively big angle, although I would say that it's not as big as something like a Gun 12. The YS3M is also known to feature the repulsion technology. I think auto homing is a combination of the super close distance core corner magnets and the repulsion technology. So the repulsion technology is, again, I would say is best explained by Xu Miantao in his video of the Tianma X3. The Tianma X3 has foot magnets, the YS3M has like core corner magnets, but either way there is a magnet inside the corner base, and when you turn it around like close to 45 degrees, this magnet will get really close to the bottom one of the 2 left magnets, and it will cause some repulsion. So I think the best analogy I can think of is my Aochuang WRM 转到45度的时候，这2个角块和这1个角块就会感觉了一点排斥。Like I nicknamed it the Aochuang 12 because I've also done really close core corner magnets, and I think you can refer to my past videos on how its repulsion works. But recently in the competition that I've been to, I actually went to try someone else's Aochuang WRM and tried my own, and the difference is that I think the other person who I talked to also agreed with me that his Aochuang, the unmodded one, feels much more flat to turn, whereas mine felt something more like a hump. And I can also feel that effect quite a lot in the YS3M. So like the first 45 degrees of your turn actually takes more effort because you're pulling the cube out of alignment, but once you cross the 45 degree mark, it actually takes less effort to turn the cube. So I do really like this feature quite a bit. It does make the cube feel like in a way control better and also align itself better. And I very much prefer this over having a hard snap. I think the last feature that I want to talk about is the magic clothes. So this is a direct translation from the Chinese phrase "mo yi." Mo is just a short form for magic. Yi can actually refer to all sorts of clothes, which includes outer jackets and coats. In my opinion, magic coat is actually a better translation than magic clothes. And it's pretty much a UV coating that makes the cube a lot shinier, more scratch resistant, and much less slippery to grip. So I do appreciate this grip way better. One cube that I actually really want to compare it to is PVC coated Shadow V2M. This is actually a cube that I've gotten by trading with a friend. I didn't actually buy it off Speed Cube Shop. I'd say both of them are pretty much as shiny as each other, and this is my first Shadow V2M, the one that I kind of mained before getting the Aochuang WRM. Yeah, you can kind of tell that the one on the right is significantly shinier than the one on the left. 3x3s, I can say the same thing. So this is the RS3, this is the YS3, and yeah, the YS3 just has a better shine. Although this one started as a frosted cube that I polished to make it glossy. But yeah, I don't think this one has better shine, and I don't think shine is a feature of making the grip better, but it's just a coincidence that yeah, frosted cubes are the worst ones when it comes to grip, followed by the frosted cubes that I artificially polish, then followed by the cubes that are glossy from the start, and then the coated cubes are the best. From a competition that I went to recently, almost everyone that I talked to wanted to buy a copy of this cube, and after getting a copy of it for myself, I must say I am not disappointed. And while I don't think the cube's special features are anything super revolutionary, I do think that it excels when it comes to basic functionality. It offers sufficient speed while still being super stable and reliable. And while it's not the only cube on the market to feature repulsion tech, I think the repulsion tech in this cube is just very well executed. And I actually bought this cube partly because I only have one other good 3x3 on hand, the RS3. All my other 3x3s, which realistically only two of them. One is the Zanci, which is like obviously too outdated, and the other is the RS2, which is slightly damaged. One of the screws inside is actually going to unscrew itself the more I play with the cube, so it's not as full functionality anymore. So as of now, I think the YS3M surpasses my RS3 in almost every regard except for soft times. I do think I average the same timing on both, but YS3 is just blatantly smoother, more stable, and I enjoy its handling a bit better. So overall, I think other people will also agree with this conclusion. But the general recommendation is, if you're on a budget but still get a good cube, the cheapest and the least feature-rich variant of the RS3 or even the Super RS3 would be the best pick, because you can still set up one of these to perform grades, so you can just grab the lowest cost one. But if you're willing to spend more money to get more features and get the highest quality cube out there, that's pretty much ball call UV YS3.